Namaste, my beloved. May I welcome you this morning, both to my heart and to the temple of Kriya Yoga. Some 3 decades or so ago, I was sitting in a Japanese monastery, and they had simply finished combing the sand or raking the sand, and the monk came by, and I had pointed out to him how beautiful it was. These lines within the sand. And he smiled at me like it was a strange thing for me to say and said, "After all, is not happiness still the goal?" I think that it is important that you hear again and again and again that it is possible for you to be happy. It is possible for you to really, 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 really be happy. Happiness is really possible for you. The goal is happiness. And we have to, each one of us in our mystical or psychological approach to life, need to understand that we need to be aware of what is happening inside us. Intellectually, unconsciously, hidden, heart-wise, emotionally, desire-wise, in the Marjan chakra, and otherwise. And not to be so concerned about judging it as being concerned about understanding what is happening and why we are reacting as we are reacting. It's the old Sufi story which I've told because it's such an important story. Once upon a yogi time, in the desert, there was a rock. And right next to the rock, there was a piece of wood. And they were arguing, the wood and the stone, the rock and the stone. They were arguing that they were the same. Obviously, the shape is about the size, bleached to pure white from the desert sand. And the wood never could understand that the rock was different. And the story goes that one day, towards evening time, a Bedouin came and gathering up firewood to keep warm in the cool evening time, he grabbed both the rock and the stone and threw them into his fire. And the last thing that the wood heard the stone say was, "Now do you see the difference between wood and stone?" Do you understand that? Some of us react and are warmed by the fire. Some of us are consumed by the fire. The secret is there are 2 fires in this world. The Marjan fire, you know about that one, I'm quite sure. And the divine fire, which you also know about or you would not be here. They are sometimes referred to as emotion and devotion. The need to understand that we need to quiet our physical bodies, our mind, our senses, not to destroy them, not to suppress them, but to quiet them so we can see on an inner level, a deeper level, if you prefer, on a higher level, why we are reacting as we are reacting to the fires of our lives. We are not here to be consumed. We are here to become warm, to feel the fire divine gently caressing each cell of our being and each petal of our mind. Here to feel truly a warm and alive and well. To be here in a positive, creative atmosphere that manifests within us and flows out, that builds our Shangri-La. As Hilton pointed out, it is our hope that each of us will find our little paradise. That paradise is not in Chicago, it is not in Inverness, It is not in India. It is not in China. If it is anywhere, and if it is to be found, it is, as in the Lost Horizons, at the top of the mountain, at the summit, which is the summit of Mount Meru, known to you in Western tradition as the single eye. We call it Ajna Chakra, the eye of Shiva, the eye of God, the divine eye. It is where the fire, the Kundalini, the Kriya, the divine flame of creativity that is constructive, not destructive, that gives warmth to your body and therefore life to this segment of time and space for you. It is possible for you to be happy. It does not mean that all the problems are going to go away this moment. It means that you are going to respond differently to the problems, and as it were, to make each problem a stepping stone to ascend to the mountaintop, that you might see the evening stars and realize that they have meaning and purpose beyond the grandeur and beauty that man beholds but understands not, that it points to a direction, to you and to your life, for you and for your life. We have learned in Kindergarten 101, is that a good way of saying? We learned in Kindergarten 101 that happiness comes from things, diamond rings and cars and temples and money and names and titles. And though there seems to be a lot of these around, someone else always seems to have. I hope you don't mind my getting a little humor. And as we begin to grow up and get into Kindergarten 202, the second realization is you got to work for them. No one's going to give them to you. You got to work for them. And the truth is that most people stand in their own way, either because of a psychological lack of vitality, or much deeper, I believe, some feeling realization, well, happiness isn't for you. That's what I hear people say. Oh, yes, but yeah, Yogananda, he was happy, but that was Yogananda. Oh, yes, he was happy, but he was Saint Mirabai or something of this nature. Always someone else, but not me. And that is the danger point. You can be happy, and though it is difficult to communicate in English, the happiness has already been given to you by life, by God, by the creative force. All you have to do is work for it, to re-find it. You hid it somewhere in your foolish days. And now you have to go back and search for it. And oftentimes, the happiness fails to manifest because we are, as it were, using the modern word, brainwashed into the belief that happiness comes from things. Now, things are wonderful, but things do not give happiness. Wives do not give happiness. Husbands do not give happiness. I don't even think gurus give happiness, if I can be very honest with you. Life does not give happiness. Happiness is something that you have to strive for. My mother would say, truly, truly work for. It is something that takes time. Remember the little cartoon that came out not too long ago of a series of little Japanese people in a little temple, and the Zen Dyer, the Zen master, was there. And he's saying, now, this is a course in Satori, cosmic consciousness, enlightenment. And I've asked you to bring your lunch because it may be a little delayed. Like it's going to take more than a day. It's going to take more than a year. And in my belief, and that's all it is, as far as you're concerned, a belief, it possibly may take more than a lifetime. The Indic philosophy says it may take 100,000 lifetimes to attain Ananda, bliss. It may take, some literature points out, 250,000 lifetimes. But I say, and the Master has said, this may be the 250,000 plus one lifetime. This may be the lifetime that you have been striving for. And unless in some sense you come to understand that the secret of heaven is the secret of the now, that heaven is not out there. Heaven, as Bernard pointed out, heaven lies within, whether it is lower heaven of the heart chakra or the high heaven, the Ajna chakra. Heaven lies within. As it were, you were born with these gifts. These are what we would say in Western tradition, this is grace. You remember that? The Catholic priest I first met, Father Highball. I met him and I says, how's it going, Father? And he says, well, I'll tell you, the world's insane, Kriya, absolutely insane. If it wasn't for grace and highballs, I just couldn't get through the day. I just couldn't. Would you like a highball? And I didn't know what to say. I was very timid in those days. And so trying to be sociable, I said yes. And he said, grace, 2 highballs. That was my Father Highball's humor. We are our own enemies. And the enemy truly is that we take ourselves too seriously. We take ourselves too seriously. This is what a young New Yorker taught me. That somehow we have this American idea of intensity and of loyalty and of devotion. And the key word, because we see so much insincerity in life, particularly in the religious sphere, that we want to be sincere. And somewhere the loose wires get confused, and we confuse sincerity with seriousness. You understand? And so before we know it, we're walking down a terrible path, downhill into darkness, called heaviness. It is all right. If you cannot laugh about your plight, and I'm sure you and I, we have plights. I have them every day. Or is that a flight? The secret is that you really need to be able to laugh at life, to laugh at yourself. I was born physically, and I could not speak physically. I could, honest to God, I could say, good morning, how are you? And I don't care whether it was the middle of December or January, my third statement was, you think it'll rain. That's social grace. And beyond that, I could say no other words. Now they can't shut me up. And it comes from a tension, a psychological feeling that the world's judging us. And the truth is, we're judging ourselves. And we are not doing a very good job of judging ourselves. We are much, much too harsh on ourselves. We need to learn to relax, but to continue to move on the spiritual journey. We need to learn to relax, but to constantly move forward into our education, our knowledge gathering, our spiritual insightfulness gathering. But if you take life too seriously, which is simply to mean you take yourself too seriously, then you'll start taking everybody else serious. And before you know it, your free association, your intuition will not be functioning very well. You need to set aside your life, all these emotions, what I'm trying to say, all these fears, all these apprehensions, just set them aside. Either the world understands you or the world does not understand you. Either your beloved loves you or they love you not. And if they do not love you, there's no way you're going to sell that love to them. And no matter who you are, or as I am, with all my flaws and faults, which unfortunately show a little too clearly, you either love me or you do not love me. It is not a judgmentalness, forgive me, openly. It's an instinctualness. You either love me or you do not love me. I love you. Spiritually, I love you. And therefore, I don't care what you have done. You may consider yourself a good person. You may consider yourself a bad person. You may, in Western terms, consider yourself a sinner. Join my crowd. I still like, after all these 60 years, I still like chocolate bars. And you can laugh and say, now that's your worst sin. And I say, no, I say hell and damn. And you say, oh, now come on. And the answer is, so as you see this as nothing, so I see what you have done as nothing. What I see is what you're striving to become, which is to say that which you already are, and are striving to become more aware of that which you are. The secret is this in life spiritually. The secret of happiness is this. A man has a father, the father is a banker. The father dies, the son becomes the banker. Pretty soon the son gets himself a bigger desk than his father, a gray flannel suit and a big cigar. He dresses like a banker. He smokes like a banker. He starts surrounding himself with banker symbols, and before you know it, he's thinking like a banker. You know, that means you go and say, I'd like to borrow $100, and he says, do you got $500 collateral? And you say, if I had $500 collateral, I wouldn't ask for $100. He says, I'm sorry, if you don't have $500 collateral, I can't give you $100. Isn't that the way it works? Do you understand? In other words, you need to understand that the symbols that are surrounding you, whether you know it or not, will infuse themselves upon your mind and will affect you subliminally. If you dress like a wild woman, you will become a wild woman, whether you want to be or not. If you dress as I dress, you become as I am, whatever I am. You follow it? And so you need to surround yourself with warm, gentle, understanding people. You need to surround yourself with seekers. Definitely, absolutely. You need to surround yourself with books. Whether you read them or not. Maybe I better say textbooks. Whether you read them or not at first is unimportant. The symbol is there. And the symbol will begin to manifest. And one of these days you'll say, I wonder what's in the book. And you'll read it. And you'll read another one. And you'll read another one. And then later on down the road you'll say, I wonder what they meant by what they said. You're now beginning to question. You're beginning to think. And pretty soon you say, I wonder if there's something more than just thinking. And now you begin to meditate or intern or intuit, coming to the feeling state of your being and realizing that the spiritual thrust towards happiness is not so much an intellectual thrust as it is a balancing of heavy, imbalanced emotions. And so these heavy, imbalanced emotions that are picked up from preschool or kindergarten 101 and kindergarten 202 have to be readjusted to. It is possible for you to be happy, really happy. How? By being yourself. You truly are a most unique human being. You really are. Whether you approve of yourself or disapprove of yourself, there is absolutely no one like you. And as I jokingly say, there's absolutely no one like me. There's not another one. There's not another little Kriyananda running around, thank God. One's enough, okay? So you have to, despite the uniqueness, you have to have humor about it. And then you try to take that unique personality and sort of like kneading bread, you kind of shape it into the form you want. And you sort of give it a upward direction. You sort of bring the extremisms of your emotionality and the extremisms of your intellectual nature, and you start bringing them up into sort of like a hierarchy, like a pyramid, to a point of the apex of your own being. At that moment, you come to realize two things. That everything in the universe, internal or external, is an object. And objects are dead. And the only thing that is alive is you. Now, I would rather say the Atma, the spirit, that which you are. And it is the spirit that you are that gives the beauty to the objects. It is the spirit that gives meaning to the objects. The objects are symbols of the spirit. What you surround or find yourself surrounded with tells you not how good or how bad your spirit is, but the movement of your spirit. You find yourself surrounded with 10 children, it tells you where your spirit is. Someone may say that's good, someone may say it's bad. It just tells you where it is. Spiritually, in the ultimate movement of happiness, what we're trying to do is bring ourselves back into ourselves, into the pure awareness of spirit, where all the things dissolve away. And you can start recreating afresh. It's really a Libran balancing point, a tendency to balance. It is not a negation of life. It is not a denial of husband or wife or child or job or career or of the physical vehicle. It's a question of bringing it into a point of balance where you can now regenerate a better life. And the better life is not better things, but happiness. And it was taught to me this way. If a man is really a bad guy, can I cuss and say bastard? If he really is that, a woman coming into his life is going to be problems for him. It's like an immature person receiving $50 million, or was it 14 yesterday? That lotto boy. If you're already imbalanced, these things will tend to produce a great deal of force in your life. Deepa Shanti's beautiful one. I'll be there in spirit. If one is happy, if one is a man and one is happy, a woman will bring greater happiness. If a woman is a woman and she's halfway sane or sane, a man coming in will bring greater happiness. It starts within you. It's like a woman who's had a bad day and she puts a dress on, and then she puts another dress on, and she tears that one off and she puts on it. You remember the game a lot of women play? You see some effeminate men do the same thing. No dress is right. But they bought every one of those dresses, and when they bought every one of those dresses, that was the perfect dress, so they wouldn't have bought it. But now you have one of these, what I call bad days. A bad day is when you're far away from yourself. You're way out here. And the answer is just lie in the bed, take a hot bath, go as you are, whatever it may be. Forget trying to please your mind with objects, because that's what you're trying to do. Where your head is, the dress isn't at that moment. And you can put 40 dresses on, if I can use this as a symbol, or 40 suits. It isn't going to help. What has to be changed is the head. Once the head is changed, any dress will almost suit you. And the same is true of life. We put on clothing. These are situations, marriage, babies, jobs, careers, goals. These are clothing, psychic clothing that we put on ourselves. And oftentimes they don't suit us, and we throw them off, causing, obviously, great. I quit. And that's, that causes other problems. And the answer is, the happiness is a movement towards changing your head. It's a movement where women are better than men at. It's getting in contact with yourself. There is nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong with saying, I'm angry. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm upset. There's nothing wrong with that. I feel like cussing. There's nothing wrong with that. To be upset, to be emotional, should not be considered a terrible sin. The answer is, glue the mouse for a day or two and don't make any decisions. When you're emotional, you're what we call angular. It's the old Gnostic symbol of execution. You're pulled this way and you're pulled that way. You're stretched, you're crucified in Gnostic terms. It means this energy's out here, this energy's out here, and you're here, and you got it together. Bringing it together, bringing your logic and making it alive, bringing your emotions, bringing these two together produces a synthesis, produces a harmony called feeling. Or we say ananda, ananda, ananda. It's a bliss awareness. It's a bliss ecstasy. It's just self-realization, spirit realization, God realization. It's an awareness of you yourself, not of the things you have. And when you come back to that point, you now can recreate anything very easily. Do you ever find yourself in a terrible situation and realize, whoops, I boofed, and try to get out of that situation? My humor is like saying, I do. It may take you 20 years to undo what you said I do in 1 second. Do you understand? Bad humor, okay. Life is so easy to get into a situation. But have you ever been into an uncomfortable or intolerable situation, how many years or effortfulnesses it takes to undo what you have done? Because you're so out of balance. What you have created is so out of balance that it becomes absolutely impossible to easily bring it back into balance. Because you're so far away from yourself. We call it surface living. The more surface living you have, the more impossible it is to create. The more you are brought into yourself, into the awareness of yourself, the easier it is to create. What's the value of the creating? You're smarter today than you were yesterday. Maybe not much, but you're smarter today than you were yesterday. I'm a little smarter today than I was yesterday. And so it allows us to bring our lives just a little more into balance, that's all. Just a little more into balance. Do you ever have a suspended point in your life where you're not sure you're going on the journey or vacation or trip or not? How everything is up into the air, everything's undetermined, and all of a sudden it becomes finalized. Yes, we're going. It doesn't matter whether it's 9 months, 3 months, 30 days. You know you're going. There's all that relaxation, and now you can get about the preparation and doing this and doing that. Life is the same. What you need to understand, one, is that happiness is possible. Two, that you need some guidelines. There are two and only two. There are only two things that will be productive of happiness. One is wisdom. If you have to have something, if you have to desire something, desire wisdom. Because in the collection of wisdom, wisdom will teach you not to desire anything. And the other is the attainment of ananda, bliss. Now, if you keep thinking, for example, I want bliss, I want bliss, I want bliss, or ananda, 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 and I want is a bad word. It means, by the enunciation of this mantra, ananda, 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 ananda. It simply is focusing in on the awareness of bliss. Now, Mr. Wrong comes up and says, let's get married. You're no longer making a judgment, is he the right person or the wrong person? Is he wealthy or is he poor? Is he educated or is he on the path or not? You know. Yeah, I thought that one would get you. The answer simply is there a feeling of ananda? And though this will upset many of you, if you're holding the feeling of awareness of ananda and you come into contact with Mr. Wrong, you will be aware that you can live with the person, but there is no ananda. You can marry the person is what I'm trying to say, but there will be no ananda. And so you say, no, I won't marry you, as warm and as tactfully as you can, because you're realizing that what you're trying to do is to attain ananda. So if you marry the person, if you do not marry the person, you will still be in a state of bliss. If you marry the person, you will still be in a state of bliss. If you have a good job, you'll still be in a state of bliss. If you have a challenging bad job, you'll be in a state of... Whatever comes to you will come because of the magnetism of the Ananda mantra. Does everybody understand that? We can say it a little different, not quite as accurately. If we keep saying happiness, 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 and hold in our mind that we want to be happy, when we magnetize our mind with that concept, then the awareness is happiness is a state of consciousness. Happiness does not come from things. If that is the case, anything, a good book or a bad book, is a book. You're still happy. You can still have the awareness there are better books to read. This is a book that's not a very good book, but it's the only book, so I'll read it. And so any action you take or any inaction you take will be productive of that happiness. As opposed to what my mother said to my 6 or 7 stepsisters, daughters, your problem are you're thinking marriage, marriage, marriage. Remember back in the 20s and 30s, you had to be married and have a baby by 16 or you were in trouble. 17 men wouldn't even look at you. You were an old maid. See, you become somewhat liberated. The world's improving. And so this enormous pressure at about 12 and 13 to move forward, where's the man? Anybody. The first person to marry, you say yes. You don't look up or look down and see whether he's 200 pounds, 5 pounds, or 37 pounds. Yes. married. That was the whole game. And look at the disasters that oftentimes manifested. We won't talk about today. But, because what they were thinking is marriage, not happiness. And as I told you, sometimes I counsel women, and they have a question, should I marry John or shouldn't I marry John, or Adam or Eve, whatever you want to call them. And the question I always ask is, well, Eve, it's a simple question. You want to be married or you want to be happy? And they always giggle and laugh and say, Kriya and Nanda, that's silly. Of course I want to be married. And so they get married. Do you understand? You can't do that. That's getting in your own way. Get happiness first. The marriage will be excellent. Wisdom is the same way. But you have to hold that awareness. Wisdom, prajna is the word, and the other one is ananda. And though this seems to be more something psychologically within our head, as you begin to magnetize your awareness to either one of these, then you will realize that the mind is a magnet, and it begins to bring psychologically into your brain various symbols and thought patterns that are productive of wisdom and or of the anandic bliss. Now, when those symbols surround you inside, sooner or later they begin to externalize and crystallize as symbols outside yourself. They will not be destructive to your wisdom or destructive to your bliss state. Now, the third and final stage, and this is the tough one, but it's truth. One must understand the difference between learning, becoming educated. We say sometimes in the karmic philosophy, learn a lesson. It's not a punishment. There are things we're here to learn. And so you have to distinguish between what we would call striving towards something, mastering something. Remember A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. Remember those terrible lessons that some of you still haven't learned? It is hard to master the body. It is hard to master the mind. But these should not be thought upon as terrible or awful. These are lessons. These are challenges. These are obstacles to be overcome. But not to get emotional about it. As the beautiful monk said, life is like learning to walk. The only thing you have to remember is you stand up one more time, then you fall down. And don't get bitter when you fall down thinking you are different than the world. You shouldn't fall down. And that is the greatest single obstacle. We're in kindergarten 101. And someone says 1 + 1 is 2. And I don't know, you're looking out the window watching the crickets or something, and you didn't learn it. Now you find yourself in kindergarten 202. Okay? And someone says 1 and 1 is what? Now you're embarrassed to admit that last year or last semester that you weren't listening. And so rather than say, I don't know, what is it? You hide. So yeah, I know, that's silly. Everybody knows what 1 and 1 is. Now you find yourself in kindergarten 303. You follow? Then you say, oh, in 202 I could have asked, but God, in 303, never. And you blink, and now you're in kindergarten 707, and you're really in trouble. You're really in trouble. Just take that symbolism. There are things that you have not learned. There are lessons, karmically and otherwise, that you have not mastered. And somebody told you somewhere that you're something, a completed person, an adult. And so you are now embarrassed to admit to yourself or to anyone else you don't know. So you never ask. And that is, if you understand, if I'm communicating, and I'm not sure I am, but if I am communicating, that alone is the key obstacle. You were taught that you were born when you first came out of your mother's womb and that you're going to die in 60, 70, 80 years. It is not true. You were in your mother's body 3 months before mother became pregnant. You will leave this body and you will pick up another body like you've been doing since the infinity of time. You are the self-existent one. You were not born. You were not created. You are self-existent. The symbol, you're a fish in the ocean of existence. And someone's been telling you, you got to swim to the Indian Ocean. That's where it's happening. It's not true. Or it's going to the China Sea. That's not where it's happening either. It's not happening in any of the 7 seas or oceans. It's happening where it's always happening, inside you. Secondly, someone told you it's happening out there. And so you keep looking out there. Even to the degree you think you got to go to India or Upper Lower Sclavovia to find truth. Truth isn't in India. It's not in China. It's not in the American Indian. It's not in Washington, D.C. If you're going to find it, you can find it where only it is, deep within you. There is a quiet place deep within you where you can go to establish peace, but where wisdom can be found and your life direction can be attained. Then you got to struggle with it. You got to master that. It's called fasting. It's called proper diet. It's called proper breathing. It's called proper exercise. It's called proper study. It's called meditation, meditation, meditation. It is called self-discipline. And it has no value unless you do it because you realize is what should be done. Not because you feel I'm threatening you or saying this you gotta do. That's no good. You do what you do spiritually because you become aware of who you are. You do not do something to get something or to become something in spirituality. What you do spiritually, you do only because of a self-realization. And each person, as you see them doing, whether you approve or disapprove, they're doing what they're doing because that is the moment in time and space as best they are aware of themselves. That's all. We have samskaras, we have karma, we have tunnel vision, we have preconditioned attitudes, and these are what we have to overcome. These are the challenges. And everything that comes into your life, absolutely everything, is a blessing. It may be an ouch blessing, it may be painful, it may be terrible, but everything, absolutely everything that comes into your life is a gentle karmic neutralizer to bring you back into the awareness of your spirit, so that at some moment you can break from your body awareness, body consciousness. Someone said, "Oh, that's you. That's you. This is me." And this is a coffin. That's what this is. This is a dungeon. This is a prison. Maybe beautiful, gorgeous. It's still a prison. In India, they say, a bag of bones and a bottle of blood. And the idea is to get out of the bag and the bottle. You have the expression here. You're bagged in, isn't that the way they say? Breaking out of your bag, something of this nature. And so in the same way, what we're ultimately trying to do is to balance our earth life, our body awareness life, to the degree that we can close off the senses, pachahara, and lift, and lift, and lift, and go higher, and higher. And we see, and we feel, and we realize, neti, 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 I am not this body. I am not this brain. I am not these thoughts. This is not my life. This is not my planet. This is not where it's happening. And we draw in and up again to become aware of the light that never fails. The light divine within us. And we begin in some small flickering awareness to see that within us is the divinity, And immediately, instantaneous, at the self-same millisecond of time, we see the same flame flickering in every sentient creature, every man, every woman, every child, every cat, every dog, and though you may not want me to say it, even every carrot and every cabbage, absolutely everything is vibrant alive with the Spirit. And we come to realize that the beloved is loved not because of the beloved, but because in the beloved is the breath of God. The husband is loved not because he's gentle or kind or warm or my husband, but because the breath of God is within the husband. You find that the wife is loved not because she is my wife, but because in her is the breath of God. The firstborn son is beloved not because he's my firstborn son, but because within that child is the breath of God. And it is true of every cat and every dog and every monkey and every sentient creature. And the rocks and stones that you scientifically say are dead. There is nothing dead in this world except the not-seeker. They are of the living dead. All else is alive. And we realize we are flowers in the garden of God, victorious. Da-da-da-dum. And that we dare to love, that we can become strong enough, confident enough, having the self-realization to simply be our human self, that there is enough divinity within us to dare to be human and to love as a human, to cherish as a human, to think as a human, and to struggle along with the humans. We have freed ourselves from the enemy which is seen when we look in the mirror. And we are supremely happy. And if there exists within us then any desire, it is a desire to share the flame, to share the love, to share the humanness, to encourage, to warm, to love, and to aid in whatever small way we can aid, to lift the soul to the heights of self-realization. You can be happy. All it takes is time and self-discipline. Namaste, my beloved. O infinite, great Spirit, saints and sages of all religions, O thou holy Kriya lineage, Babaji, 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 come sweep clear our spiritual path of all doubts and of all obstacles. Bring now at this moment thy unctuous waves of bliss. Let these waves of bliss allow these waves of bliss to saturate each cell of our being, each petal of our mind, bringing us now Ananda, Ananda, Ananda. Thou knowest better than I that which we need. It is for that, and for that alone, that we meditate. Again, my beloved, namaste.